Hi and welcome back. In this section, we're going to take a deep dive into my take on the elements of strategy. But first, a bit of history. In his article, The Forgotten Dimensions of Strategy, Michael Howard presents 4 influences on strategic thinking and outcome: the social, the logistical, the operational, and the technological. The basis for these can be found in Clausewitz's work on war. In the chapter, The Elements of Strategy, Clausewitz notes 5 elements: the moral, the physical, the mathematical, the geographical, and the statistical. According to Clausewitz, the moral element covers everything that's created by intellectual and psychological qualities and influences. The second element is about the size of the army, the organization, the composition, what kind of arms are available, etc. The mathematical might be considered the lines of operation, convergent and divergent movement, the ability to unify work using calculations and geometry. The fourth element is the influence of the terrain and the environment within which the organization is working. This can include things like command positions, mountains, valleys, rivers, the weather, as well as other influences like the quality of the roads and the ease of movement. The last element, according to Clausewitz, covers support and maintenance, basically logistics. Colin Gray suggests that we categorize the elements of strategy into 3 major groupings. The first, people and politics; the second, preparation for war; and the final category is war proper. For each, he lists specific elements that influence and impact the process of strategic thinking, strategic capabilities, and strategic undertaking or implementation. So the dimensions of strategy are then broken down to include specific elements that are integral to the nature and purpose of that specific dimension. So for instance, in the dimension of people and politics, we'll find elements like people, society, civilization, politics, religion, and ethics. Each of these elements has its own nature and is part and parcel to the process of strategic discovery and thinking. The second dimension, preparation for war, focuses on elements like economics, logistics, organization, information gathering, theory, doctrine, technology, and time. The last dimension, according to Gray, is war proper, and it focuses on the elements that include military operations, command and control, geography, the adversary, the environment, space, and friction. Now, in addition to the military concepts and dimensions and elements of strategy, as presented by Gray, Clausewitz, Howard, and others, we can look to the world of business, where we'll find that they have similar dimensions and elements. For instance, in the Strategic Execution Framework by Morgan, Levin, and Malik, we find 6 dimensions or stages in strategic thinking, with each dimension having 2 or 3 core elements. The 6 dimensions are ideation, nature, vision, engagement, synthesis, and transition. Within each, we'll find specific elements that are designed to help focus strategic thinking and delineate the nature of that dimension in relation to the other dimensions and in relation to the task at hand. In ideation, we see, for instance, purpose, identity, and long-range intentions. Identity delineates the nature dimension, which includes elements of culture and structure, and links to the element of strategy, while the element of long-range intentions delineates the vision dimension, which gets broken down into the elements of goals and metrics, again with a link to the element of strategy. This leads to the engagement dimension, which leads to the dimension of synthesis, where you'll find a portfolio of different programs and projects, each of them their own elements. And lastly, to the dimension of transition, where we'll see the influence of these projects and programs on specific operations and relationships, and allow for the examination of outcomes based on the metrics set in the dimension of vision. It's important to note that these dimensions and elements are influenced by the external environment within which the strategic undertaking is going to take place. There are many other researchers and practitioners who have delineated dimensions and elements that impact strategy. In the next section, you'll look at some of the most prominent and often repeated elements to understand their nature and task in strategic thinking.